All right, well, I have 6:01, so we will go ahead and jump in, and others can join us if they wish. Welcome to our Bishop Plus session. This is the second of 8 sessions that we are doing over the course of the late winter, early spring months here. We started in February. We have several more events this month and into late April to answer all of your many questions about Ohio Wesleyan, whether you are a high school senior who's been admitted and trying to make a decision, or you're a junior, even a sophomore, perhaps a parent of any one of these students who's looking for more information. We are glad that you've joined us here this evening. This is the first time we have done this session, Forward to Better, and we've assembled a group of informed administrators and faculty who can talk with you about some of what we're doing at Ohio Wesleyan as we've thought about COVID, and as we're beginning to move into what people are tentatively referring to as this post-COVID time period. We're thinking not about going back to normal at Ohio Wesleyan, but really going forward to better. And what does that look like for us? That's what we want to talk with you about tonight. We want to talk with you about 3 primary areas of focus at the institution. We want to talk with you about our diversity, equity, and inclusivity initiatives. And we have 2 individuals here, Don Chisabe and Jason Timpson, who will talk with you about the work that they're doing with our DEI Council and with our Office of Multicultural Student Affairs. We have Doug Coyle here, who represents our Student Engagement and Success Division, and we'll talk with you about the work that they're doing as we move through this time period and look to the future. We also have our new Provost, Carlin Crowley, who's been with us for about 9 months, and she's going to talk with you about what's happening in academics. There's been a lot of work over the last year plus on the academic side of the house, some changes, some new initiatives, and some thinking about the programs and supports that we want to offer to services as we look to the future. So we're going to jump in, and I'm going to ask Jason and Dawn to introduce themselves and then get started, and they'll move right into then Doug and Carlin.
Are you able to see?
You're good.
Okay. Great. So Don and I are going to talk about some diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives here at the university, and the things that we have been thinking through and where we hope to move going forward.
Jason, before you continue, let me add one more point. So new is this session that I forgot to invite your questions. Those who are participating in the session this evening, you'll notice down at the bottom of your screen, there's the Q&A function. Ignore the chat, but please use the Q&A function throughout this entire presentation. We're going to talk to you for a little bit, but we really want to get to your questions about these topic areas that Jason, Dawn, Carlin, and Doug will be presenting on. So please put your questions in at any point in time. And I have a few if we don't hear from you, but we really want to hear from you. Thanks, Jason. Go ahead.
Lost my unmute button for a second. So hi everyone, my name is Dawn Chisabe. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am the Interim Chief Diversity Officer here at OWU. I also teach in Black World Studies and Women and Gender Studies, soon to be Africana, Gender and Identity Studies, and have been with the university now going into my 5th year. It's my first year as the Interim Chief Diversity Officer here. My main focuses of expertise are on racial health disparities, Black women's history, and the African diaspora. So anything that has to do with the continent of Africa and its diaspora is kind of where I'm at.
And again, Jason Timpson, I use he, him, his pronouns, and I'm the director of the Office of Multicultural Student Affairs. That includes our Global Majority initiatives, our Women's Resource Center, as well as Spectrum, which is our LGBT+ center. We do lots of things, right? So we'll talk about some of those, but our primary goal is advocacy, support, education is what we do. We're moving to a new space, so that's going to be awesome, and I'll revisit those in a minute. There are lots of things that I love to do, right? So I'm a bit of a fun junkie and a nerd. And so again, the people who share walls with me know that I like to listen to music, sometimes loudly. I like, random dance breaks. Those are my things. And games are also important for me. I have a graduate degree in recreation, so I get to learn about people through the act of playing. And how useful the act of playing actually is. So I think those are things that are wonderful. And again, if you see me waving a flag of identity, I like therapy. I think that all folks should go to therapy, particularly folks with marginalized identities. And so again, if you are in space with me, you will hear that about 1,000 times at any given time.
So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about what I do here at the university. So one of my primary positions is functioning as a chair of the Council on Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, which I think is a really phenomenal space at our university. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about who we are and what we do, most importantly, because students are on the council as well, right? So it's made up of faculty, staff, and then students as well. So there's typically a student member from our student government, and then somebody who is nominated from one of the vice presidents at OWU. So we have student representation in really phenomenal ways that are a part of every single discussion that we have on the council, right? So they're really integral members to what we do. And the council is really all about advocacy, right? Like making sure that we are thinking through diversity, equity, inclusion, justice, anti-racism, that we're thinking about all of these things all of the time on campus. So some of what we do is create, facilitate, and arrange training on diversity, equity, and inclusion all around campus. So we do that via workshops. We have little discussion groups. We have book clubs. We have training modules. We do lots of stuff with training on campus and kind of vary what it is that we're engaging in moments. We review existing policies and propose changes and new policies, which is actually really an amazing space to be in. We assemble data and engage in research. So anytime we're thinking about wanting to do something in the future, we research what that could look like and engage in thinking through what all of that could look like for the university. We are in the process now of creating a dashboard for the university that engages diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we have the first phase of it up and running, and we're working through multiple phases of the dashboard. We recently started this really phenomenal DEI grant program. So faculty and staff can apply for grants to do diversity, equity, and inclusion work on campus, and so can students. So this semester, we're offering 5 grants for students on campus to do work and projects based on diversity, equity, and inclusion that will really help forward the university in really tangible ways. And then we create spaces, right? Like, so we create spaces of support for folks across campus and think through what it is that support really needs to look like on campus for faculty, staff, students, everyone. That's kind of the core of our identity with the council. And then speaking from the council to senior leadership and kind of back and forth, right? Like having these really important conversations on campus. So it's a space that you could think about being involved in moving forward at OWU.
So the Office of Multicultural Student Affairs primarily deals with students, right? So again, these 3 spaces, OMSA, Spectrum, and our Women's Resource Center deals in the lives of students, right? So again, advising, advocacy, community building, programming, organizational support, trainings and workshops, those are all things that we do. And it runs the gamut of a student's life here, right? So you could be a member of a sorority or fraternity and still interact with us. You can be a member of an athletic team and still interact with us. You can be a general student. And so we do all of those things, and we're kind of the umbrella for different organizations as well. So while I don't advise all of our organizations, there is a connection with each organization to make sure that folks have the resources that they need. To be able to be successful, to be able to find love, support, affirmation when things happen, to be able to report those things. So all of those things are a part of what we do within OMSA. One of the things that we have started this year that has become really effective is our campus climate reporting. And so essentially that's bias reporting, or to be able to report problematic things that happen to folks on campus or in the Delaware community, right? So an individual can report those things will come to me, and then I figure out where they go and what we do and how we give support to those individuals who may be impacted in whatever way, right? So those are important things. And again, it's just about trying to show that there are different folks in our community, and all the people who are a part of our community are valued members of our community because they are a part of our community, right? And so again, we have done lots of things this semester and this year to promote those things, right? So currently we have a display up for our Women's History Month. Last month we had a display up for our Black History Month. We will have another display up in April for Asian and Pacific Islander Heritage Month to be able to commemorate, educate, acknowledge the things that are happening in the world. And sometimes our office is about making space, right? So sometimes we have to just pause, reflect. We know that we're in the middle of a global pandemic. We have all been here for a year, moving into year 2. And sometimes it is for us to just help remind folks, hey, can we take a minute? Because we're all humans here together. And so let's figure out what that means. We also are doing a lot more programming. So here are some programs that we're doing. This week we had an awesome program, the program that we had on Monday. The title was Catalyst, Femme Fatales and Heroes, or a History of Women in Superhero Films. So those were fun things that we could talk about, how women show up in films and in graphic novels and those things. And we have 4 programs that are coming up soon. So if you are interested, go to the OMSA website, go under the events tab, and you can just log in just like anybody else. And we welcome all folks to be a part of these conversations. You don't have to have additional knowledge or experience or know court cases or those things to be a part. And so that's what we do. A cool thing that is on the horizon that I think lots of you will get to enjoy when you get here is that we are moving physical spaces. And so currently OMSA, the Women's Resource Center, and Spectrum are 3 separate spaces. They will intermingle in one common space. Our goal, and again, I have wishful thinking, but again, to have lots of cool furniture, lots of things to touch and play with. We're gonna annoy our neighbors, right? Because again, this will be a space where you can come and be affirmed, laugh. And so I have already started giving fun gifts to the people who are below me to say, hey, love you so much, and we're moving in real soon. And so those are the things that we're doing. Again, I invite collaboration. So even some of these programs are collaborative. The Whole Lives Matter, living in the intersections of race, Christianity, and sexualities will be in collaboration with the chaplain's office. And so we're excited that you're here. Hopefully that you have a mind or heart for this work, because we're here to make sure that folks are supported and affirmed while they're here in our time and as they transition out of undergrad life here.
Thank you, Dawn and Jason. I think I'm up next. My name's Doug Coyle, and I'm the Associate Dean for Student Success here at OWU. I should also point out that I am one of those individuals that does share a wall with Jason, and I can confirm everything that he said about the fun and energy that he brings to his work, and we appreciate that about him. I work in the Division of Student Engagement and Success, which some universities might refer to as Student Affairs or Student Life. My specific area includes residential life, public safety, counseling and health services, student conduct, and many of our care and support programs for students. One of the topics that we thought might be helpful to cover briefly today is the work that we do to support students during the COVID-19 pandemic and how some of that might come into play moving forward for us. It goes without saying that the way that we all work to provide safe teaching and learning environments and the ways that we provide access to resources and support has adjusted quite a bit. We've seen that from high schools across the country as well as within higher education. Much of the work that we've done this academic year, we may or may not continue to do depending on how health-related issues unfold, and what students need. One example is that we've been providing counseling sessions and health center appointments, both remotely and in person, for a lot of reasons. And telehealth might be something that continues to make sense for a number of reasons. It was already, a growing, function within healthcare or opportunity, and it seems to make a lot of sense for us now. That might be something that continues to make sense. We've continued to engage students in student organizations, activities, leadership opportunities, sometimes virtually, and always following CDC guidelines. So a lot of those opportunities that students have to interact with each other, learn from each other, work outside the classroom, have fun together. We do virtual game nights. We've evolved, and we've been able to adapt as those guidelines do change. Recently, we modified our guidelines based on guidance that we received from the CDC and from our local health officials to provide, increased opportunities for students to gather on campus. So we'll continue to follow what the health officials tell us, and we'll provide safe opportunities for students to learn on campus. It's important to note that we do coordinate COVID testing on our campus in a few different ways. Students who are symptomatic or have been in close contact with another person who has COVID can be tested at the Student Health Center on campus. Our student athletes are currently going through regular testing. We do random testing twice a week to monitor positivity rate and understand the virus. And we're fortunate that we have very few cases right now. So we continue to change the way we approach the work that we do to keep students safe based on what we're seeing on campus. When students do test positive, we provide isolation quarantine spaces, but we also help those students stay engaged in their classes during those times. Our hope is for the upcoming year that would not be necessary, or certainly not as common. But there are still obviously unknowns as we prepare for the fall, including the availability of vaccines for everyone, the numbers of COVID cases, the variants that we all track. We're fortunate to have a great team that follows that works very closely with the local health officials to make sure that we're kind of abreast of everything that's unfolding. For the upcoming year, we recently announced our plans for in-person learning in the fall and what that might look like. We'll no doubt continue to have certain health and safety guidelines in place for the upcoming year. We'll just have to see what that looks like and adapt and make sure that we're keeping students safe, but also engaged in both their classes and in activities on campus, and helping them understand what's available to participate in and how they can do that safely. The important thing is to know that we're always committed to ensuring that we have a safe campus for students, faculty, and staff, and that we're continuing to follow those guidelines from health officials, and that we adapt and support students as that unfolds. Finally, I think because our counseling services department and health and wellness programs are in my area, I'm also very aware of the toll that the pandemic can take on the emotional health of students. And there's a lot of thought and energy going into those efforts as well. So we're always committed to giving students the best possible experience on our campus, and doing that in a safe way that enhances their experience on campus. So I'll be happy to take any questions that you put into the chat function.
Great, thanks, Doug. And you did what I was just about to do, which was remind folks that don't hesitate to put your questions into the Q&A. What you've heard from Jason, Dawn, and Doug, and what you're about to hear from Carlin, please put your questions out there, and we'll address them as soon as Carlin concludes her remarks. Carlin?
Hi, my name is Carlin Crowley, and I'm the Provost or Chief Academic Officer. Part of my role, as I see it, is always to make complicated terms more understandable and accessible to everyone, and as well as with ideas. And so you might ask, what is a provost? Is it somebody from Provo, Utah? Is it a kind of cheese? It just means that I'm the head gardener of the curriculum and of your experience in the classroom and in academic affairs with faculty and where learning happens in that area. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a minute. Tonight, I'm going to talk briefly about why I love the liberal arts and a little bit about what they are. More about our curriculum and some exciting changes that have happened, future hires that are going to really shape the years to come, and just a bit about the OWU connection. I joined Ohio Wesleyan about 9 months ago as provost because I was so excited about the idea that there are colleges that change lives college. I also went to such a college, and we're very serious about changing lives. Maybe you're wondering, what are the liberal arts exactly? Is it political? Is it liberal or conservative? Is it about the arts? Is it painting or drawing? It's really neither of those things. It's a way of seeing the world through a lens of critical thinking, interdisciplinary exploration, or looking at multiple fields and ideas and concepts and theories at once, right? Learning how to ask really good and rigorous questions. And doing all of that and finding your contribution in the world that's meaningful and hopefully will make a difference, right? We help students figure out their calling and apply really great critical thinking skills to that. So the liberal arts are so important because that's what you get to experience here. Maybe you had a class in high school that you really loved that lit your fire, or a teacher in particular who introduced a subject to you didn't know about previously. For me, it was my English teacher in high school. A lot of people have a lot of love for their English teacher in high school. She was wild and introduced me to books and ideas and ways of teaching that just lit my fire and made me want to keep reading and learning. And when it came time to be a major, I too asked, well, what will I do with my English major, as any student might ask. But one of the things that's really important to know is I loved reading the texts that I read, and I loved having the conversations that I had and learning how to write and communicate effectively. And it turns out that for several years before I went to graduate school and went on to get a PhD and then became a professor of English and women's and gender studies, I used those critical thinking skills, those communication skills, those conversational skills, human relations skills, both soft and hard skills, to do really interesting work in the world that I then translated into eventually teaching myself. So part of what will help you discern here is, what is it that you love? And if you're not sure, we'll help you find out. And how can we connect you to the most excellent faculty and the most exciting courses so that you understand what you really enjoy, where your passions are, and also what you're good at, and how do you interconnect and align all those things. You may have read that Ohio Wesleyan has gone through some curricular changes. That's because we're poised to be even stronger. Throughout the United States, small liberal arts colleges are looking at that curriculum and trying to decide, what do we offer that's the most relevant, the most necessary for students now, and that also meets their career expectations and market forces. And we took a long, hard look at our 90 majors. Just so you know, I came from an institution previously that had 35 majors and was slightly larger than Ohio Wesleyan. So the fact that we had 90 is considered astronomical. And we really looked at where are the enrollments, but also, and the interest, the student interest in the driver, but also what is the market telling us in terms of where students are going and the kinds of things that they might be interested in terms of both passion and career. And so we decided to trim our majors to 70 to be even stronger and to potentially add in the future, given student interest and desire. And so because of that, because there were some faculty retirements, we're able to hire 10 new faculty in some really exciting areas. I'm going to read you the list. Sometimes I can't even remember myself, and I'm in the middle of the searches right now. In Africana Gender and Identity Studies, which is an umbrella for Black World Studies and Women's and Gender Studies. We have 2 searches in theater, applied theater, in a new performing arts department. We have somebody coming in fine arts, computer science, economics, environmental economics, education, multicultural education, specifically African American literature, mathematics, physics, and another one in theater studies. So I wanted to make sure that you knew that, because I know that there were some pre-questions. And someone said, how will that change my experience in the first year? It means that even the offerings that are now on the books and in the catalog will be expanded exponentially, because that's 1/10 of our faculty. So it's something really exciting to look forward to. One of the other things you should know about is that our signature experience is actually related to this cohort, right? The OWU connection. And you can imagine connection now matters more than ever in the pandemic, where in some ways, many of us have felt so disconnected. I know that there are beloved people in my family I haven't seen for a year and I'm dying to see, right? In other ways, through this virtual space, even tonight, we have a new kind of connection. So our signature experience, right, where you think big, go global, and get real, asks the most important questions of our time to help us be interconnected, both in a global sense and in a sense of how you're learning, how you're thinking, how you're encountering new ideas, new majors, so that you discover the world as interconnected, your thinking and your learning is interconnected, and the questions that you're asking are all interconnected. I was thinking as I interviewed a prospective faculty member just the other day who was interested in public math, and that's a new movement in the field of math, right? How does math not just be something abstract that only a few smart people can do? We need to rethink that math is accessible to everybody, and you can learn the skills and tools, and we use math every day. How can we use math to think about how voting happens in our country, right? How can we use math to help us solve problems related to COVID? And that's really the interest of our faculty, which is to be flexible, to be interdisciplinary, to think about multiple disciplines at once and how they're connected, there's that word again, and to also be equity focused, right? That equity is about fundamentally human flourishing, and it's interwoven throughout everything we do. So I will pause there and be happy to take questions. And I hope that you have heard from some of the things that I've said that we are what I think is the best of small liberal arts in American higher education, and you'll find a home here.
Great. Thank you, Carlin. So again, I invite your questions in the Q&A at the bottom of the screen. As those come in, I'm going to provide a question or two to get things started. This is a question, probably Jason and Doug specifically, but Dawn and Carlin, if you have thoughts, please don't hesitate to weigh in. I'm interested in student leadership opportunities. What do you suggest?
I mean, my question back is, what do you want to do, right? So I think that there are lots of options for folks to get involved. And if you don't find something here that's for you, then you can create that thing, right? So you're like, hey, Quidditch is my thing. I want to create a Quidditch club. Cool. That's also possible. We do have opportunities for students each semester to be able to find their space and their place. And so again, I think just trying to move forward and be vulnerable sometimes. Sometimes it's awkward to say, hey, I'm interested in, joining this organization, but I don't really know anybody. So again, we have so many options for student groups. There are different options for living spaces if that's, something that you want to explore. But we do have lots of options, and that is without regard to whether you want to be involved in a Greek organization, whether you want to be involved in some type of civic organization. Again, there are lots of just fun things. So if you want to be a part of the gaming club, again, there's a place and space. And sometimes there are informal things, right? So there are a couple of spaces on campus where we see lots of students congregate and just hang out. It's places where they eat lunch that are not in one of the, dining halls. And so again, those informal spaces are also spaces where people can find, their place and their space.
I'll just add that we encourage students to get involved in everything Jason just mentioned. We have so many student organizations. Student government is another opportunity that we would encourage students to consider. And for first year students, we will have a themed community in the first year residence hall that focuses on leadership opportunities. So it's something that might be of interest that you can consider as you're thinking about where you want to live and who you want to spend most of your time with. But you'll see leadership opportunities anywhere from athletics to music to any organization that you want to get involved with. They'll be there, and there'll be people to help you along the way and encourage you to get involved and talk to you about, what leadership style might work best for you.
I'll just
Well,
add that, oh, okay.
no,
Sorry.
go down, sorry.
I was going to add that there's also the opportunity to like intern with folks on campus. There's opportunity just to work with professors on campus, on research projects, to build research projects together. So there's lots of ways I think that you can engage in leadership on like via academics as well, right? And so I think all of these spaces really are open for folks to engage in.
The last thing I was going to add is you will be living on campus with us, right? So again, I always tell students, if you get bored, open your room door and there's something happening somewhere, right? There are RAs in your area who will be doing some of the community building stuff. And so sometimes people are like, well, this is lame, I don't want to do it. But again, these are good things. And they are fun things and they have money to spend. And so if you're like, hey, I want to do this thing, all you have to do is ask. And those things can be provided, right? Not everything, right? But there are some things that, you know, we will do. And so again, I always tell students, when you are bored and you're living on campus, open your room door and you will find something that will entertain you.
Great, thank you. Jason, thanks for that. A question that all of you could address from different perspectives. What role do students play in making decisions regarding any changes that take place on campus, be it academic or on the student engagement side of the house?
So I will say from my perspective in the Office of Multicultural Student Affairs, we advocate for students to be able to use their voice, right? And so again, whatever way that comes out, we want to be able to support those things. And there's education around, you know, here's how you do things and here are, you know, folks you can have conversations with, but we are supportive of how folks want to be able to activate their voice. And for us to be clear on, our goal is never to reshape or cultivate your voice, right? So again, it can be a protest on campus, it can be a conversation that you want to have, it can be your desire to have a teach-in, any of those things that we will support. And again, part of our support is having conversations about maybe this is as far as we go, right? Sometimes our conversation are, you know, centers around here's the life of a university. And so there are some things that you may want that can't be immediate and here's why. But we always try to have clear conversations with students so that there's understanding there, right? And again, this year, I think that we have been doing a good job of inviting students into conversation and making sure that we're closing the loop of saying, you were in this conversation, here are the actions that have been taken, and now, you know, where are we going from here? So that again, a student understands the value of their time spent in some of these spaces and the value of their voice as a student.
I'll add, we have a student handbook. It includes policies that apply to students, and we change it every year. You know, it changes every year. It may even change in the middle of the year from time to time. And we rely heavily on student input and helping, and students that help us understand the impact of policies. And so we'll work together with each other, you know, different colleagues and students as they share concerns or ideas. They talked with us about the impact of a policy or protocol, and we're doing that on a regular basis. And we encourage that kind of feedback and input from students.
Good. Let me go on to the next question that came in through the Q&A. Will incoming first-year students, 2021 first-year students, be required to get COVID tests prior to fall classes starting? How about I take a stab at that, and anyone who wants to add to it can do so. I would say TBD at this point in time. Let me tell you what happened this spring. We did have all of our students, upon their return to campus, take a rapid response test on campus. We got the results in 15 minutes. If it was negative, they were able to move into their residence hall. If it was not, they took a PCR test, had to quarantine essentially overnight. We got the results back pretty quickly, and to verify the results of that test. We've had really low to zero positivity rates so far this spring. So we are really off to a good start with this semester. I think we are, like most colleges, looking ahead to the future. We'll determine what that looks like upon the availability of the vaccine and what percentage of our students have had access to that. There was a communication that was sent earlier today out to admitted and deposited students about some thoughts related to next year. So if you fall into one of those categories, I encourage you to take a look at that and know that more information is forthcoming. We learn much on a daily, weekly basis from public health officials and other experts that informs the decisions that we make. So what testing would be required for the fall will certainly be dependent upon what we continue to learn about the virus and its status at that point in time. Let me ask another question. Carlin, there was a question about, are students able to take classes in any of the majors or programs that were eliminated? You mentioned some of the changes that occurred. Are there any plans to either bring back those majors, or are there thoughts about interest in additional programs?
Great question. So we're always assessing our curriculum. We actually have a really rich faculty-led set of curriculum committees. That's a little bit of insider baseball, but what it means is that faculty are really invested in teaching the most up-to-date ways in their fields in the most relevant manner. So students can take courses not in programs that have been eliminated, but in many courses that are adjacent. So for instance, if you were interested in journalism, we're going to have an even stronger and robust communication program going forward because we're able to make more investments there. And there'll be a journalism focused course in that curriculum. Or let's say you're in that major. Let's say you're interested in geology. Well, we won't have a geology major, we'll have an environmental sustainability major, and we'll have someone whose expertise is both in the Arctic and in geography, but also has geology training. So you can take courses that are adjacent to, related to your interest. We're interested in growing, as I mentioned before, where there seems to be student interest, faculty strength, and also where markets are telling us, majors are growing. We also fundamentally, as a liberal arts college, seek to provide the kind of education that's broad-based, that gives you a firm foundation to be able to do a number of things that are more focused and more specific. So I hope that helps answer the question.
Right. There's a question that's come in over the Q&A. I appreciate the discussion around the cuts made in the academic program. I'm curious about the general financial strength of Ohio Wesleyan, endowment, giving of alumni to the annual fund, strategic planning, which pursues new growth opportunities. In what way will Ohio Wesleyan thrive in the years to come? I know Carlin has started to address some of that. As she mentioned, much of the work that we have done on both the academic, but also some administrative realignments that have been made as well are very much focused on the future and focused on the overall health of the institution and sustaining the institution into the future. And that means paying really close attention to demand for jobs in the future, what students and their families are looking for, how we can best prepare them within our strong residential liberal arts environment to address the challenges that will be presented to them in the future. Carlin talked a lot about the liberal arts and how the liberal arts prepares one so well for such a wide array of challenges, with a skill set that's adaptable to so many different types of future opportunities. And so as students are developing those skills and they are exploring their major interest and the particular skills that they'll build and knowledge they'll acquire through those programs, we really want to be sure that they are both prepared in that academic area and prepared more globally or broadly for the range of options that may be available to them. I had read a survey that indicated that the average individual changes jobs roughly 13 times by the time they're 40 years old. So that may be promotions within a certain company. It may be different companies or organizations or firms or schools for which someone works. So that's a lot of change in a relatively short time period, 18 to 20 years. We want to prepare individuals to be able to continue to grow and thrive as the world in which we live grows around us and changes around us. Back to the question here that was mentioned, and Carlin, please jump in and expand on that. But let me just mention the financial strength. So our endowment sits right in the neighborhood of about $240 million. So we do have a healthy endowment. We are in the midst of a 7-year campaign. We are concluding that campaign in May. Our goal was $200 million. We reached that goal a year early, reset that goal for $225 million, and have achieved that as well. So in terms of giving, alumni giving, we see great success there. We've seen gifts given around some of the projects. If you were to be on our campus right now, you will see there's lots happening here. There are 2 major residential projects that are underway. There is a strong likelihood that actually the building that I am sitting in right now, which is where admission and financial aid is housed, but where our honors program will move to, our career connection program will move to, and a handful of academic departments are housed here, that there's a likely project to take place over the course of the next year or two. We've just done a multi-million-dollar renovation to our Branch Rickey Arena. So we can do that because of the giving nature of our alumni, because of the fiscal health of the institution. Like other institutions, however, we have to be cautious. We have to do the things that Carlin has talked about so that we can continue to solidify our financial position for the future. Carlin or anyone else, do you want to add anything to that?
Thank you so much, Stephanie. That was really helpful. And I'd also like to add, and I'm going to sing to Stephanie's shop and her praises. We have really strong enrollments, especially when I'm in touch with a number of small liberal arts colleges nationwide. People continue to find what we offer so compelling. And I also wanted to say that part of our sweet spot, as I'm reading the Ohio Wesleyan history as I began, there's a wonderful history, a nearly 200-year history, that we have always been a kind of applied liberal arts. We had a journalism program early that's become communication. We've had business. At one point, we offered nursing. We're really strong in the STEM and health sciences, as many of you know. And so students have always found a path to both really integrated learning and also meaningful work and careers. Our Career Connection and our Career Services Center is really innovative. One of the things that's happening that's newer is we're really centering career catalysts in every division, whether it be humanities, sciences, social sciences, arts, so that those catalysts can help students find meaningful path and work, their calling, translating the liberal arts into work out in the world. And it's important to remember that Forbes has rated us one of the colleges with the highest upward mobility, but also an entrepreneurial college. There's a real entrepreneurial spirit in Ohio Wesleyan, and you see that in the Delaware Entrepreneurial Center and other ways where students can find, if they have an idea. I love that Jason said, what's your dream? What's your idea? Go do it. Help us activate your agency. If you have an idea for a company or startup, you can enact it in the Delaware Entrepreneurial Center. So there is a robust movement between what you major in and work out in the world. And then you see that in our alumni who keep giving back in really rich ways, both in terms of connection and also dollars to Ohio Wesleyan.
Very good. Thank you, Carlin. And you may have been looking at this question because you did address it. Just want to make sure if there's anything we want to add. An attendee says, I will be entering as a first-year undecided major, but I'm interested in exploring health-related professions such as nursing. What support is provided to help students select a major, and is there a pathway for health professions that don't lead to med school or vet school?
That's such a great question. And we are just now exploring a very specific pathway related to nursing, but there are a number of opportunities. One is even our health and human kinetics major, which may be of interest to you, where you can look at sports management or nutrition or other health-related classes. It's really robust, has excellent faculty. And in fact, I was thinking about a number of them have been offering cooking classes virtually throughout this year to think about how health relates to nutrition and likewise. So yes, there is absolutely a place for you here.
Great, thank you. This is for probably Doug and Jason, but again, others who want to contribute, please do. What are the plans for first year student orientation for fall 2021 and support to help new students transition to college and get connected to other OWU students?
I can start with that, although I know certainly plans for orientation are unfolding, and Stephanie, you may know more, but we're putting a lot of energy right now into first year programming and opportunities, especially given the renovation of Smith Hall and the opportunity that we're going to have first year students housed together within separate communities. So that there is kind of a feeling of belonging within smaller communities as well as the larger community for first year students. And so students who might be first generation students, for example, there'll be a cohort that they can get engaged with if they want. There are certainly plenty of other opportunities. We always have an involvement fair early in the year so students can get a sense of what student organizations are available if they want to get involved. But because we're going to have that first year community on campus beginning this fall, it's going to give us a great opportunity to help students have that experience and at the same time learn about opportunities that fit their interests and help them understand what they want to do, they want to get involved with, and then us helping them make that happen.
That's right. And so as Doug said, plans do continue to evolve related to orientation. What used to be an in-person summer orientation last year became, out of necessity, a virtual orientation out of safety and precaution. It will continue in that way this summer, but we've developed a really robust online orientation experiences for students so that you begin that transition process even virtually before you are here on campus. And then it does look like, and this was stated in the communication that I referenced earlier for admitted and deposited students, it does look like that we will have our students move in on or around the 19th of August, and they will have a multi-day pre-orientation and Camp OWU experience that will help them meet their classmates, learn more about the campus community and the greater community in which we're located, and begin their academic and social emotional transition to the institution. Classes are intended to start on August 25th. Like everything right now, let me just add a caveat that we will always continue to monitor the situation around COVID, any new developments. We continue to consult with public health officials to ensure that this is the best and safest environment. So I want to put that out there, that is constantly on our mind as we are actively moving forward and are planning for an in-person experience this coming fall. Carlin, let me ask you this question again if others want to jump in.
Can I add something real quick?
Oh, Jason, please, yes.
So the thing that I would add is just before Camp OWU starts, there is a 3-week program for first years who are interested. It's called the Summer Bridge Program. And the Summer Bridge Program is an awesome program to get folks acquainted with the university, right? People get credits for attending, so there'll be coursework that folks are doing. We'll have conversations on study tips and all those things, but there are also lots of social engagement that'll be happening, right? So we'll do some field trips. We'll get folks connected to the Delaware community, to the Columbus community, as well as lots of connections with faculty and staff on campus. And so the Summer Bridge Program is designed to be a wraparound support for students to kind of get folks in the groove early, right? So it's a 3-week summer program. It's free for students to attend. We will have a cap on students. We had a slight pause last summer, but we're bringing it back. And we have, I don't want to put things out there too soon, but just know that there are lots of fun things that will be involved. We will have some upperclassmen as some peer mentors. And again, the 2 class offerings will be things that you may not be able to take during the regular semester. And so get ready. I also will tell folks, if you are an introvert or somebody who needs a little space, it's not weehaw all the time. I will also give you some downtime. So don't think that you have to be an extrovert to do it. We love all folks who want to be a part.
Thank you, Jason. Clearly, there's a lot to look forward to. Dawn, let me ask you this question, and then I'll get to this one here posed that I'll address to Carlin first. If there are other questions that you have, please feel free to send them our way. Dawn, I know that there is work being done on accessibility issues across campus. Can you talk a little bit about that work and what they're addressing?
I can. Doug might want to jump in here as well, because I know he's been doing a lot of work before this time period as well. But yeah, I mean, we're thinking about what accessibility means online, what it means in the classroom, what it means on campus, so physical accessibility, thinking about parking spaces and access to buildings, thinking about, you know, what we need on campus to be a truly accessible campus, right? And what accessibility looks like for each individual. And I might, I don't know, Doug, if you want to add some stuff in here, but I know that you've been also really integral in all of this as well.
Yeah, thank you. Well, we've done a couple of recent reviews of accessibility challenges and opportunities. Primarily physical, although I understand accessibility is much broader than that. And we do have a program within our academic resource center for accessibility support. But we've done some recent audits and reviews, and Dawn and I are working together on a committee that's going to be launched that will also include students, so that we can get their input as we go forward, and then you know, have opportunities to affect change as needed, and make sure that we're providing the best access to opportunities for our students.
Great, thank you both for that. Carlin, here's an interesting question. Being a data-driven institution, much of the data that informs decision-making comes from within Ohio Wesleyan. But when you seek data and benchmarks outside of OWU, where do you look? How do you make sure you're on top of or even ahead of trends in higher education?
This is a very sophisticated question, I have to say. So I think about it, it's akin to me of when I go to the doctor and she says, you need to get the flu shot or you need this test or whatever it is. And I say, how do you know? I'm comforted when a doctor says, well, there's new research in this journal and here's what I've heard from you know, this X many other doctors, and here's what we know from other studies. So similarly, we are looking at a number of items and trends. The first of all, with data, I mean, it's true, I'm biased. This is part of how you check yourself with data. We have a really robust Office of Institutional Effectiveness through transparent dashboards. We can look at trends in our majors, trends in retention, trends around equity, because we're entering that data and tracking that data. We also participated in a number of surveys. I think one of the things to know, especially when you're shopping for small liberal arts colleges, is how does that institution sit with other institutions? And we are in one of the best consortiums in the country, the Greater Lakes College Association, with 13 other you know, peer schools, where today I was on a call with all the provosts of those institutions where we were asking about graduation and comparing notes and having a sense of what others are doing. We're also in the Ohio 5. You know, Ohio is one of the most liberal arts wealthy of states, in that it has so many wonderful, storied and excellent liberal arts institutions. So we're consulting with them, we're comparing data, and we're looking at best practice. And all of us, you know, because we are an educational institution, we're a member of the American Association of Colleges and Universities, presenting, researching, always asking ourselves, are we making the best decisions and the most data-informed ways? I could go on at length on this question, but I hope that starts to give you a bit of a sense.
And I'll just add, in my area, we spend a lot of time looking at trends, enrollment trends, what's impacting enrollment, and what then larger effect might that have on the institution. So it's a constant conversation amongst our senior leadership team, amongst our director level individuals on campus. We're constantly trying to keep a finger on the pulse of higher education so that we are sure that our students have access to the best and most relevant experiences that will prepare them for the future. You know, this is kind of getting into the nitty gritty, but many institutions look at what they call peer and aspirants. You look at institutions that are like you in many ways, and you look for those institutions that are aspirational, perhaps because of resources or services or specific programs. And so you constantly want to be looking at both of those groups so that you have a sense of where you are and where you're going and the trend lines that are moving you down the road. So great question, as Carlin said, very specific. You all have asked a terrific set of questions. We thank you so much for your participation this evening, for your thoughts. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us. You'll see that all of us have our names. Here, Jason's last name is Timpson. So if you want to be in touch with any of us, jot down our name. You can easily find us on the website and access our email addresses. If you've got a follow-up question, for those of you who are admitted students, we have a number of events that are coming up over the course of the next couple of months that, if you're in a position to do so, would allow you to travel to campus to meet with individuals here on campus, learn more about programs, services, and offerings that we can make available to you. We have lots of additional virtual events coming up as well. If you want to know more, again, go to our website, but March 21st is our virtual open house. If you can't come to campus for one of those more extensive programs, we'll come to you. We'll give you a tour, we'll bring our current students to you. We have a number of other individuals who will join us that day. And then we have other sessions like this, based on a topic or on a series of topics that are taking place throughout the course of March and the rest of April. And also, if you are a junior or a sophomore or parent of one, we do have a program on campus specific to that population of students, Saturday, April 24th. There are other visit opportunities, though, that take place throughout the course of the traditional week as well. Almost all of our virtual programming, with the exception of that open house I mentioned, but almost everything is open to sophomores and juniors as well. We know it's a time when you're looking to gather information and start to make decisions yourself as you move into the next year and perhaps beyond. So again, thanks so much for your great questions. Thanks to my fellow panelists for joining us today, and have a great evening, everyone. Take care.
Thanks, everybody.